Ah. Never mind, you can't see anything. Got dripped up for Halloween, as you can see. Obviously, I gotta have a Halloween costume. Here's mine. I don't know why I did this. It's like 1 a.m. Anyway. Now, usually around this time, everyone does like top 10 scariest levels, top 10 scariest Skarvers. No. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. I kind of just wanted to make a big, really big spooky video, sort of like 3 or 4 different rankings of spooky stuff in Skarvers. That's why today we're doing Skylanders is kind of spooky, and I'll be trying to go over basically everything that's spooky within inside of Skylanders. Levels, Skylanders, lore, anything that is remotely scary we'll be talking about in this video. Because today is Halloween, the day where everyone decides to be a little spooky. And obviously I'm uploading this on 31st, Halloween, spooky time. Let's do this. Today we're doing Skylanders is kind of spooky. I mean, like, if you really think about it, the undead element's pretty scary for a kid's game. I mean, undead, the definition of undead is really like things that are dead, right, but look like they're still alive. Like zombies, for example. Basically reincarnated stuff, which is very spooky for a Skylanders, element. And most of the undead Skylanders don't even fit within that category, too. I mean, like, Cinder doesn't. I don't really think you can count Eyebrow as that. I mean, a lot of Skylanders undead element do not fall in that category. It's kind of weird. But yeah, undead is definitely like a really spooky part of Skylanders if you actually think about it. Speaking of undead, let's talk about the undead rosters we have. In SSA, we have Chop Chop, Cinder, Hex, and Ghost Roaster. Now, I think it's kind of a stretch to call Cinder spooky. I mean, she's a purple dragon that shoots out lightning bolts. But we have Chop Chop, a skeleton Archean, and what could go wrong with him? Well, Chop Chop actually used to be in the Archean army once the Giants beat the Archeans, though Chop Chop had nowhere to go and eventually became the undead Skarnder we know. He got fed up with being stuck in the middle of nowhere and went up and left. Ghost Roaster wasn't always called Ghost Roaster. He used to be a chef named Olaf. Then one day while walking the mountains, he fell over and fell all the way down into the Valley of the Undead. In the valley, Ghost Roaster found a town with puffy white spooks. Olaf, at the time, ate them, not thinking much of it, and it turns out that those were actually things, and the king of that town put a giant chain on him and tied him up. Eventually, Eon found Olaf, now Ghost Roaster, and took pity on him and made him a Skylander. Hex actually used to be an elven sorceress, but her powers were way too strong, so she had to go into hiding as to not be kidnapped by evildoers that would use her powers for evil. But while Hex was on the run, she decided that she wanted to face on one of the biggest evildoers ever, Malefor. But when she got down to the land of the undead, she wondered why no one was attacking her. Well, it's because when she went down to the land of the undead, she actually became an undead person herself. But she would later go on to be a Skylander and one of Eon's most admired Skylanders at that. So as you can see, a lot of undead Skylanders have backstories where they weren't always spooky-ish, or they actually stayed normal until something happened to them, which turned them undead. That is why I like the element, actually. Basically, in all the other elements, Skylanders were born with their elemental powers, except for maybe tech, I guess you could say, but the undead element has a lot of Skylanders that certain events happened to them that made them undead, which fits the name of the element being undead and everything like that. Now let's get into some levels. Obviously we have 3 undead style levels in SSA, but we also had the Dark Light Crypt level, which gave us a total of 4 spooky levels in SSA. The 3 undead levels being Crawling Catacombs, Cadavers Crypt, and Creepy Citadel. Now all those levels are spooky in their own right, but out of the 4, I think that I have to say the Dark Light Crypt is probably the most scariest out of them all. While this level does have some comedic undertones, it is pretty dark. We see ghosts and things like that, and even get a switch from the undead realm whenever we want. And Oculus is a pretty spooky villain for the level 2. Giants also has a spooky level 2, and it is Willikin Village. This is more of a creepy level than straight up like scary. It feels kind of unsettling at points, you know, that uncanny valley if you've ever heard of it? When the Willikins are sleeping, everything is gray, dark, and the music is pretty slow and creepy. Now when the Willikins awake, it is less creepy, but still, a very creepy level. There's really only one spooky level in Swap Force because it was marketed to even younger kids than before, but the one spooky level they did go all out with, and that level is Rampant Ruins. It is literally an Archean graveyard. First of all, Archeans are robots, so I don't know how it works, but it's a graveyard, so I mean, how can it not be spooky? The music is a nice icing on the cake for this one. All the overgrown branches and everything make it feel abandoned, adding to the spooky factor. For Trap Team, I gotta go with Monster Marsh being the spookiest level there. The theme of the level is a place that's cursed, and we fight enemies like Ice Cream and I-5, some very spooky looking villains. The setting too is in a marsh at night. It really gives off a creepy vibe. And Superchargers, I mean, come on, it's the land of the undead. Now, I don't really think that they're trying to give a spooky theme off for this game. In fact, most of the other levels aren't that spooky, and even the Land of the Undead isn't too spooky for an undead level. But despite this, I mean, no other level really comes close to being as spooky as Land of the Undead in Superchargers. I mean, it does take place in the Land of the Undead. The gimmick is pretty okay with changing different points of views and stuff like that, but this level also has a prison in it, which is pretty cool. And obviously has all the undead enemies in it that are skeletons. And finally, Imaginators, the least spooky game. I'm not choosing an undead or dark realms, I'm going with the abandoned amusement park. This could also go in the category with Willikin Village, where it's more creepy than scary. The theme park music in the background is actually kind of creepy because it just keeps going over and over and over again. And everything else is dilapidated around you. And there's kind of a jump scare when you need to get the key at the beginning of the level, which makes this level the scariest level on Imaginators. Some other spooky aspects of the series are the story scrolls we find in the games. One found in Cadaverous Crypt named Life in Undead reads, "The philosopher King Mortalius, First Lord of the Undead, said, while the living fear the undead, the opposite is not true. The undead are reasonable. They simply wish the living to stop well living. Where's the confusion? We all be on the same team eventually." Kind of profound if you think about it. Another one found in Willikin Village from Giant says, "Years ago, a group of cave dwellers used to live among the Willikin until they mysteriously disappeared one day. It was discovered that there were many entrances in their cave that were later covered up with large boulders, appearing as though someone was trying to keep them from entering the caves, or exiting. Did the Willikins trap the cave dwellers within their own caves? Now that's pretty messed up, but it would make sense. I knew those Willikins could never be trusted, and they are definitely not as innocent as they come off as. Sadly, we would be robbed of more spooky scrolls in Skarvers, as after Swap Force, Trap Team scrolls would be the Meditation of Boom with Flynn writing all of them, and then in Superchargers we had the Chaos Diary entries, and Imaginators didn't even have story scrolls. Believe it or not, the Dark Skarvers have a spooky background. Bet you couldn't guess it with the word dark in their name. So the first Dark Skarver was Spyro, who could harness every element, with dark being one of them, even though it didn't exist at the time. Whatever. Then one day, the darkness tried to corrupt the core of light, and that turned Spyro into Dark Spyro, without Spyro's will. Pure darkness began to flow through him, so Eon had to cast a spell over Spyro to make sure he wouldn't turn completely evil. What made the Dark Skarvers dark in Swap Force was actually petrified darkness in the game. Chaos used it on the Skarvers, and they turned dark, and with the help of Spyro, they were able to use their dark side for good. Now, in Trap Team, there's actually something called Dark Traptanium, which never actually gets brought up in the game, I'm pretty sure. And that also, much like Swap Force, turned the Trap Team dark characters dark. And Spyro once again had to help them make sure they didn't turn evil. There are not too many Dark Skarvers though, which is a good thing because if there were a lot of Dark Skarvers, we might have a problem. Let's get to Chaos, the main villain of Skarvers. While Chaos may seem like a doofus at some points and very non-scary, you'd be wrong. Chaos has done a lot of messed up things in the past. First of all, according to the Battles vs. Wiki, Chaos is actually a 3A threat, which is a universe level threat, which states characters who can destroy all celestial bodies with a volume of at least equivalent to the observable universe via an omnidirectional explosion. Alternately, create or significantly affect a universe of a comparable size, which does not involve the destruction and or creation of space-time. Yeah, I don't think Chaos ever shows that in the games. I don't know why it says that in the Battles vs. Wiki, but if that's true, Chaos can destroy universes. That's pretty scary, actually. Now let's get some other stuff. Chaos created the Sky Eater, which eats everything in its way. But if this is true, then that means it also eat any living being that was in its way too. This means that yes, Chaos murders a bunch of innocent things in his way to become the evil overlord of Skylanders. And as you can see by cutscenes, he is not at all bothered by this fact, and even worse, the Skylanders don't seem to care either. They never bring it up, which either means the Skylanders are super ignorant about this or they simply don't care. I mean, Chaos is worse than Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers combined. This dude does not care about anything, and he might just be a psychopath or something like this with these symptoms. I mean, he has committed mass genocide, it seems, which, I don't know about you, but that's pretty scary. Also, how could you forget to mention all the various Halloween variants, like Pumpkinhead Eyebrow. We also got Frightful Fiesta and Candy Coated Chopscotch, and we even got some Halloween Chase variants too, like Halloween Fright Rider. Honestly, the Halloween variants might be the most consistently good variants out of any holiday variants. Sadly though, a lot of Halloween variants are chases for some reason. Now, this isn't spooky, but we gotta talk about those Halloween costumes. These are supposed to be for kids, but I mean, they're super creepy. I mean, just imagine waking up next to the Spyro costume. These are so cheaply made that it's funny. Not one of these costumes is good, actually. I mean, look at Jetvac, Wallop, Spyro, Trigger Happy, Gilgrunt. They're all bad. And the sad thing is, I have one of them. I have the Trigger Happy costume, which obviously doesn't fit me anymore. I mean, I don't know how they thought sending these things would be a good idea. These do not look good. I mean, maybe they're so bad that they actually fulfill their job because these look super creepy. I mean, if I saw some kid running around with this in like 3 a.m. at my house, I would be pretty scared. I mean, look at these things are just super weird, and it's also kind of funny how some of the Swap Force Skylanders masks are just cutouts of their face from the posters and stuff, which is like really funny actually. Okay, but yeah, as you can see, Skylanders is pretty spooky, especially those Halloween costumes. My goodness, are those Halloween costumes spooky. And there's probably a bunch of more Halloween stuff that I forgot to mention in this video. But yeah, it is spooky day, so everyone be safe, go trick-or-treating, you know, have some fun while you still can. I'm probably too old to be trick-or-treating. And then again, I am making videos on Skylanders, so there's that. But for real guys, be safe, have a happy Halloween, and go get some of that candy, and I'll see you guys later.